Young guy meets a girl at a bus stop and ends up falling in love. The anime begins with a 16-year-old boy, Shiki Tsubasa, moving to a new city called Kitami in Hokkaido because of his father's job. He arrives by taxi and notices the falling snow. He receives a message from his father apologizing for not being able to pick him up due to work, as Tsubasa arrived earlier than expected. Tsubasa assures his father that it's okay and he can make his way home alone. He spots a sign indicating the arrival of Kitami and asks the driver to stop, thinking it's close enough to walk. As he steps out of the car, Tsubasa is impressed by the completely empty and silent place, feeling a sense of freedom compared to Tokyo where he used to live. He also notices the pure air of Hokkaido but realizes the freezing temperature, experiencing a winter harsher than he's accustomed to. Now his only option is to walk through the snow to reach his home. Tsubasa regrets his father's decision to move during winter, and to make matters worse, his phone is running out of battery. Suddenly, Tsubasa notices a girl nearby wearing a skirt despite the cold. He is surprised at the difference in their clothing, as he is freezing despite being bundled up. The girl notices Tsubasa looking at her, and he takes the opportunity to ask for directions to his home. Approaching her with his phone, he realizes she has a red nose from the cold. After pointing out the direction, the girl mentions it's a 3-hour walk, wondering why he's on foot in such weather. Tsubasa is surprised that a neighboring district is so far away within the same city. She explains that Kitami is vast, having the largest territory of all cities in the province. Tsubasa regrets getting out of the car without assessing the situation, but thinks he can call another taxi. The girl explains that taxis don't come to their location, and it would take at least 30 minutes to get one by phone. Feeling stranded, Tsubasa thinks he's in trouble, but the girl suggests waiting for a bus with her, which would take him to his destination in 5 minutes. The girl realizes Tsubasa is not from there, and he explains he just moved from Tokyo, surprising her that someone would leave a city like Tokyo for a place like Kitami, assuming he finds the people there tacky. Tsubasa notices the girl's accent and explains he moved for family reasons, finding Kitami a peaceful place. He reflects on being bullied in Tokyo for not being popular, but feels relieved that no one in the new city knows him as Brega, tacky. Observing Tsubasa, the girl comments that he seems like a nice guy. Later, she gets excited to discover they are the same age and will attend the same school, Hokkaido High School. She becomes overly familiar, leaving Tsubasa embarrassed. He thinks he has never met a girl like her in Tokyo and wonders if all girls in Hokkaido are like her. At that moment, the girl starts calling him, but he is distracted and doesn't hear. To get his attention, she playfully puts some snow inside his coat, finding his reaction to the cold amusing. Tsubasa notices her laughing, impressed by her beauty, and accidentally comments on it aloud, making the girl blush. The bus arrives, and before she boards, Tsubasa asks for her name. She replies that she is Fuyuki Minami and says goodbye. Tsubasa is thrilled to have moved to that city, but realizes he should have boarded the bus with her. Now he has to wait for the next bus in the cold. At the same time, he freaks out for losing his transportation. Minami thinks it would be cool if both of them were in the same class. The next day, Tsubasa goes to his new school, where he introduces himself to his class, explaining that he moved from Tokyo the day before. Then the teacher shows him where he should sit, and the boy goes to his desk while searching for Minami. As he doesn't see her anywhere, he thinks they must have gone to different classes, feeling a bit sad about it. However, Tsubasa tries to cheer himself up by thinking that he has always liked serious girls with dark hair, and that he was just impressed because he had never met a girl like Minami before. But at that moment, she enters the room and gets super excited to see Tsubasa ignoring the teacher calling her attention for being late. Not only were they in the same class, but they also sat next to each other, making Tsubasa wonder if something as cliché as that coincidence happened in real life. Then Minami finally learns Tsubasa's name and says he has a beautiful name. She then calls him by his first name, making the guy nervous with all that formality, as only his family and friends call him that. And so the class goes on, but Tsubasa shivers from the cold as if that room were a freezer. He wonders how everyone is attending class in that freezing environment, but realizes that his classmates are wearing jackets and blankets. Tsubasa shivers from the cold and thinks that he might catch a cold that way when Minami nudges him and offers her blanket, explaining that she usually uses two because she catches a cold very easily, but that at that moment she was warm with just one. Tsubasa accepts the borrowed clothes and puts it on his lap, warming up instantly because the blanket was already warm from Minami's body. This makes Tsubasa realize that he also had the girl's scent, bringing a sensation as if she herself were hugging him, but he fights against that thought and tries to control himself. After the class ends, Tsubasa returns the blanket to Minami and thanks her for lending it to him, but out of nowhere, the girl smells the clothes. He thinks it's because it was stinking and says he can wash it for her, but Minami explains that she actually smelled the blanket because it had their combined scent. Then Minami says that there is a way for Tsubasa to thank her for her help, as she had no one to accompany her after school. And Suvi takes Minami to the train station, once again getting nervous with their proximity. On the way, out of the blue, the girl asks if Tsubasa has a girlfriend. The guy is surprised and denies it in a way that amuses Minami. Then she asks where he usually goes for dates in Tokyo. Tsubasa mentions 2 places despite never having had a date, and the girl is surprised that he didn't include Shibuya, a place where many people go to buy clothes. However, he says it's better places where you can eat and stroll, but he says this without mentioning the fact that he simply has never done that and read it on the internet. Minami comments that Tokyo has many more options for places to hang out than Kitami, which leads Tsubasa to ask where she usually goes. But the girl explains that during winter, it's too cold to leave the house, so they just visit each other's homes. At that moment, the two arrive at the train station, and Minami thanks Tsubasa for accompanying her there. Then he says goodbye to her, but before leaving, she asks if he would like to come to her house the next day since they didn't have class, as she wanted to know more about Tokyo. Tsubasa gets nervous with that invitation, but agrees to go to her house, leaving Minami excited. And so the next day, Tsubasa goes to a girl's house for the first time in his life, and it's only his 3rd day in that city, making him even more nervous about the whole situation. He rings the doorbell, thinking that if his family knew he was going to a girl's house, he would be in trouble. Then Minami enters the intercom and opens the door for Tsubasa, making him wonder about the security of the place. As soon as he walks in, Tsubasa begins to take off his shoes. She welcomes him and says he's lucky that his parents aren't home. This makes the guy nervous and confused about what she meant. Later, Minami shows Tsubasa around her room and he notices how warm the place is. She explains that the room has a large heater, along with underfloor heating, unlike his own room, which is always cold with just a small heater. With this, Tsubasa understands that she mentioned he's lucky his parents aren't home. Otherwise, they would have to stay in his chilly room. Tsubasa thinks that nothing strange will happen, and the girl decides to take advantage of the guy's distraction to accidentally bump her foot into him and give him a scare. Then Minami asks what they could do, and because of that, she remembers to offer him a drink. She goes to the kitchen and asks what Tsubasa would like to have. As he replies that anything is fine, she brings a drink called katsujin, explaining that she has liked it since childhood. He tries it and realizes it's similar to yogurt. Meanwhile, Minami gets some for herself too, but ends up spilling it on her clothes. So she goes to change but comes back wearing an outfit that makes Tsubasa more nervous than he already was. To distract himself, he quickly shows that he brought a movie for them to watch together. And so they start watching the movie since neither of them had seen it before. However, in the middle of it, Minami ends up falling asleep. Tsubasa wonders why she's acting so carelessly, sleeping like that near a guy, but he thinks it must be because she doesn't see him that way. Sometime later, Minami wakes up and asks about the movie. Tsubasa explains that it had already ended and he didn't want to wake her, but he leaves the Blu-ray for her to watch. Then Minami realizes she's covered with his jacket, and Tsubasa explains that despite the room being warm, he was afraid she might get cold, so he thought it was better to cover her with something. Minami returns the jacket still half asleep, and Tsubasa says goodbye, explaining that it's getting late and he has to go back home. Only after Tsubasa leaves does the girl wake up. She runs after him and apologizes, feeling bad for falling asleep and leaving him alone. Tsubasa only cares that she went out in that outfit and covers Minami with his scarf to prevent her from catching a cold, making the girl blush. Minami thanks him and he offers his coat as well, but she explains that she always dresses that way when going out quickly. Tsubasa is relieved to see that she's fine, but unlike the girl, he starts sneezing from the cold. Then Minami explains that she's hungry and starts pulling him towards a place called Sycamore, saying that the meal is on her as a way to apologize for sleeping during the movie. A few days later, Minami makes a mini snowman and takes a picture of it to post on social media. Later, she goes to her school and finds Tsubasa distracted with a poster. The girl sneaks up and asks him quietly what he's doing. Tsubasa startles, and Minami sees that he was looking at the poster for the Kitami Winter Festival, which would take place the following weekend. So she decides to go with him to the event, leaving the guy a bit nervous about the idea of having a date with the girl. And so on Saturday, Minami has lunch with her mother, May, and her younger sister, Momoko, who misses her father during a meal as he should have already come home from work. Then May suggests that they take advantage of his day off on Sunday for a family outing. Momoko is excited about the idea and mentions wanting to go ice skating, but Minami explains that she already made plans to go to the winter festival with a school friend, so she can't join them. May remembers that Minami used to attend the event in elementary school. The next day, on the day of the festival, she arranges to meet Tsubasa in front of Kitami Station. He is still nervous about the idea of a two-person outing, but tries to calm down and focus on enjoying his first event in Hokkaido, considering that Minami might have offered to go with him to be friendly, given that he just moved and didn't have any friends. And so Tsubasa arrives at Kitami Station and waits for Minami calmly. But as soon as the girl appears all dressed up, the guy freaks out again, almost having a heart attack. She notes that it's their first time going out on a day off and asks if Tsubasa thinks she looks pretty. He obviously agrees, but Minami says that since she asked, it seems like the compliment was just out of obligation. He quickly changes the subject, recalling that she mentioned not attending the winter festival since elementary school. She agrees, saying that she indeed hasn't been to the event in a long time. Then Tsubasa mentions being excited to see the snow statues and ice sculptures, things only found in Hokkaido. He shares that he also researched the food stalls, showing genuine enthusiasm for the outing. Minami quietly advises Tsubasa not to set too many expectations, but since he doesn't hear her, she pretends she didn't say anything. And so they head to the Kitami Winter Festival. Arriving there, Minami thinks Tsubasa won't find the event that exciting, but he is thrilled with everything he sees. They go to see the snow statues, and the girl comments that they used to be even bigger. Tsubasa says it's probably her who grew. Then he decides to take a photo. Minami approves the idea and takes a selfie of the two, but the guy ends up looking strange because he is distracted by the girl's approach. After the photo, she smells food and decides to go to the stalls so they can grab something to eat. There, Tsubasa buys a sugar-coated corn dog while Minami enjoys her yakitori. When he returns, she asks to take a bite of his corn dog. He hands over the snack for her to bite, but then gets nervous about eating where Minami bit, and she finds it amusing how easy he is to read. After eating, they make the most of the festival, and after enjoying themselves, they take another break to have a hot drink being distributed. Minami takes the opportunity to ask if Tsubasa is enjoying the outing. He says yes, explaining that he finds all the snow and ice simply incredible. After all, until now he had only lived in Tokyo, and despite Hokkaido still being part of Japan, everything here is quite different. Then he thanks Minami for going to the event with him, making the girl blush. She confesses that she was a bit worried since the last time she attended the winter festival. She was still a child. Despite having a lot of fun back then, she didn't know if the outing would still be enjoyable, so she was a bit concerned about him being disappointed, realizing now that all her worry was unnecessary. The girl comments that when she's with Tsubasa, she likes Hokkaido even more because he reminds her of how great that city is. Although she never realized it, she loves her hometown and is happy to have gone to the festival with him. Suddenly, Minami stumbles and falls to the ground. Tsubasa rushes to help, but they end up very close, both feeling awkward about the situation and quickly move away without being able to look at each other. After the festival, they leave together, and Tsubasa suggests that if she wants, they could go out together again somewhere else. Minami takes the opportunity to tease him, asking if he wanted to go out with her so much, and mentions that she wishes to go to the Sapporo Snow Festival someday. The next day, during lunchtime at school, Tsubasa prepares to eat his packed lunch when Minami appears. She sits with him and says she brought instant noodles for him to try, commenting that the food always seems tastier at school. Tsubasa is surprised to see that Minami bought yakisoba just for him to try. She explains that he was so excited about the food at the festival stalls that she wanted to introduce more of Hokkaido's cuisine to him. Then Minami pours boiling water from her bottle to prepare the noodles, and after waiting 3 minutes, the meal is ready. She explains that the yakeben comes with Chinese soup broth so it can be made using the water that would be discarded. Tsubasa is impressed by the appearance and aroma of instant noodles. The girl then takes a bit of yakisoba and puts it in the guy's mouth. After tasting it, he starts talking about how good the food is, and Minami mentions that she paid off her debt because Tsubasa gave her a bite of his sugar-coated corn dog at the festival. The guy immediately blushes and she teases his reaction, but he covers it up by saying he turned red because the noodles were hot. Next, Minami asks to see Tsubasa's lunchbox. He shows it to her, explaining that it's just a regular lunch, but the girl is impressed with the dish, even asking to take a picture. She tries a piece of meat and is enchanted by the taste. Tsubasa explains it's pork prepared by his grandmother, prompting Minami to joke that she wants to marry his grandmother. After lunch, while the girl touches up her nail polish, he thanks her for the yakisoba, explaining that it was the first time in his life he had instant noodles. This makes Minami remember that Tsubasa also mentioned that the other experiences they had together were new. He agrees, recalling it was the first time he went to a girl's house, as well as never having shopped at a convenience store, and never having been to a festival with a friend before. These things make Minami start to consider Tsubasa a rich guy. She mentions feeling a different aura from him, like someone living in Tokyo. Tsubasa explains she has the wrong idea about Tokyo and says he doesn't think his family's rich. Then Minami asks if she could go to his house after class. Since the girl literally invites herself, Tsubasa has no choice but to agree. And so they go to his house together, while he wonders what he's going to do since his grandmother will be there. Suddenly, Tsubasa sees Minami excitedly entering a snow house probably built by some child in the middle of the street. She pulls him inside with the intention of giving him another new experience in the city, but Tsubasa feels uncomfortable with the situation, especially with their closeness. So he quickly exits the ice house, but to his misfortune, his grandmother appears right at that moment. Tsubasa thinks about coming up with an excuse for being inside an ice house, but Minami appears first, making the lady think her grandson was doing something inappropriate with the girl. Next, Tsubasa introduces his grandmother, Kid Hanamiya. Minami is delighted to meet her and also introduces herself, unaware of how awkward they were in that situation. The girl mentions tasting the lunchbox Kid made for Tsubasa and how divine it was, making him worry about what his grandmother will think. Minami continues, saying she envies him for being able to eat such delicious home-cooked meals every day. Kid thanks the girl for the compliment and asks about her relationship with her grandson. Minami begins to answer that they are friends, but Tsubasa says outright that they are just classmates, leaving the girl confused. At this moment, it starts snowing, and Kid bids farewell to Minami, explaining that she and Tsubasa need to go home for a very important appointment. The guy apologizes and also says goodbye to her, thinking that he should have foreseen that it would never work out because his grandmother hates when people are too open in relationships, which is exactly how the girl acts, and because of that, she probably wouldn't talk to him again. However, soon after, Minami goes after them, asking them to wait. She explains that it's not a good idea for Kid to walk in the snow with an umbrella, as it might be slippery, and she needs to have her hands free to protect herself in case she slips. She mentions that her grandmother broke a bone that way some time ago, so she knows the importance of being careful. Kid follows the advice and closes her umbrella. Then Minami asks which way they are going to get home, and Tsubasa points in a direction, which the girl recalls has a crosswalk that is probably covered in ice and quite slippery in that weather. Because of that, she suggests a safer and quicker route for the two of them to take and decides to guide them there. Then she offers to hold Kid's bag, telling the lady that she should take care of the hands that prepares such delicious food. At that moment, Tsubasa says he will carry the bag and takes the opportunity to ask if Minami is angry with him. But she replies that she has no reason to be angry with someone who's just a classmate. Tsubasa apologizes for speaking that way about her and explains that he had difficulties telling his grandmother, but he considers her a very important friend. And so the three go to Tsubasa's house, guided by Minami, while the grandmother observes the two during the journey. Upon arriving, she is impressed with the residence and begins to say goodbye since they had an appointment. However, Kid offers the girl to come inside for a hot tea, explaining that thanks to her help, they arrived earlier and have some free time. Inside the house, Kid prepares the tea, thinking that she's getting soft, but if her grandson chose that girl, it must mean she's a good person. However, when Kid goes to the two to deliver the tea, she sees Minami taking several photos of the house, mentioning how excited she is to be in the house of a rich family. This makes the lady think that maybe she should keep an eye on the girl, but then she notices how happy her grandson was. This makes her remember how he used to smile that way when he was just a little boy who wanted to study and learn many things, so that when he grew up, he could take care of everyone in his family. Since that was a long time ago, Kid thinks she could trust that smile. A few days later, Tsubasa and Minami take the school bus to spend a whole day of class skiing, a common activity in Hokkaido. While she was super excited, as she loved skiing and had been doing it since childhood, Tsubasa was a bit apprehensive, having never skied in his life. The girl teases the guy for being afraid of skiing and explains that practically everyone there is used to it. Tsubasa then explains that unlike Hokkaido, it rarely snows in Tokyo, and when it doesn't accumulate enough snow for skiing. Suddenly, he notices that Minami is distracted, looking at a girl named Akino Sayuri sitting next to him. She asks if the girl is excited about skiing, but Sayuri completely ignores her, leaving Minami a bit sad. Tsubasa observes that Minami usually gets along with everyone and finds it strange how the girl treated her. He deduces that something has happened between them and asks Minami if she's okay. The girl explains that she's desperate to be friends with Sayuri because she's sure they would be good friends. Minami recounts that they've never argued or anything, and she really likes Sayuri, despite not understanding why the girl always ignores her. Tsubasa comments that Minami has a lot of determination to keep trying to be friends with Sayuri, and she explains that she finds everything about the girl divine. Minami starts talking about the girl's style and appearance, making Tsubasa notice Sayuri, who also notices he feels the same way. Later, their class finally arrives at the ski resort, where they are divided into groups A to C, based on their skiing abilities, with each teacher responsible for a group. Since everyone knew how to ski, except for Tsubasa and Sayuri, the teacher puts them together to practice on a flat surface, while the rest of Class C goes up the cable car and down the ski slope. However, the teacher warns that as he will be in charge of Class C, he won't be able to keep an eye on them, so they should be careful and not take unnecessary risks. Tsubasa thinks this is his chance to talk to Sayuri and ease things between her and Minami. However, as soon as he starts speaking, the girl puts on headphones, signaling that she doesn't want to be disturbed, and Tsubasa decides to respect her wishes. Then she starts skiing, and he decides to do the same, noting that it's easier to walk when shifting weight from one leg to the other. But after a short time, Sayuri falls. Tsubasa goes to help her up, but she stands up on her own, questioning why she has to learn to ski. At that moment, Minami arrives, performing various snow maneuvers, excited about skiing. This impresses Tsubasa, but the teacher scolds her for risky jumps. Sayuri asks Tsubasa if they are dating, as they were talking on the bus and during class. The guy gets nervous and explains that they are just friends. Sayuri comments that Minami is the perfect popular girl, being flashy, party-loving, and very outgoing, having everything she doesn't have. After opening up a bit to him, Sayuri goes back to skiing, while Minami helps others at the ski resort gather the courage to descend the mountain, instructing them on the correct way to do it. After a while, the teacher in charge of Class C finally shows up to check on Tsubasa and Sayuri. He apologizes for being so busy with the other students and explains that most of them have already gone for lunch, feeling embarrassed for forgetting to inform the two. So they take a lunch break, but as everyone has finished lunch, Tsubasa decides not to eat on the bus to avoid being alone with Sayuri. Therefore, he goes to have lunch at tables inside the ski resort. However, upon arrival, he realizes he forgot his chopsticks. This makes him go back to the bus to get the chopsticks from his backpack. However, upon entering, Tsubasa finds Sayuri with her shirt lifted. He quickly turns to the other side, and both are embarrassed and silent for a while, not knowing what to say. Tsubasa deduces that the girl thought it was safe to change inside the bus since it was empty, and he thinks the best thing to do in that situation is to explain himself. So Tsubasa apologizes for seeing her changing and explains that he won't tell anyone what he saw and just came back to get his chopsticks he forgot in the backpack. He asks if he can just grab them and leave the bus, but as Sayuri remains silent, he thinks it's better to leave and come back later. However, before leaving, she holds him by the shirt, and despite still being red from the incident, she says she needs to explain. As a result, the two have lunch on the bus, but as they start eating in silence, Tsubasa becomes afraid of the girl. Suddenly, after taking a sip of her drink, Sayuri starts explaining. She mentions that her body sweats a lot, which makes her very embarrassed. Consequently, she started avoiding participating in sports, but after a while of doing that, she fell behind in all athletic activities. Sayuri continues explaining that it made her lose confidence in herself, and before she knew it, she was avoiding everyone. That's why sometimes she tries to make an effort, like that day, but being caught trying to wipe her sweat made her even more nervous. After hearing the girl, Tsubasa apologizes again for what happened, but Sayuri says it's her fault for being so careless. Then the guy is puzzled about why she had the courage to open up and tell something so personal to someone she just met, and Sayuri explains that it was easier to talk to him precisely because they know nothing about each other, and he's extremely reliable, making it unlikely for him to spread what he saw to others. She comments that besides that, they were in a way in the same situation because she didn't have any friends, and he had just been transferred there and still didn't know anyone properly. Tsubasa says it's not easy having just moved, but helping her makes him happy. At that moment, they both hear a noise coming from her backpack. Tsubasa says she can check what happened, thinking it might be a notification from her phone. Sayuri hesitates for a moment, but concludes that there's no reason to keep hiding. So she reveals that the noise was the notification of an update for her fighting game. Tsubasa mentions that he doesn't usually play, so he's not familiar with that game, surprising her as it features many famous characters. She then suggests she try playing. However, Tsubasa has no idea what to do, so Sayuri explains how to play, finding it amusing how completely lost he is. She gets excited talking about the game, making him uncomfortable with her closeness. Sayuri notices and apologizes for getting too excited. She explains that she wants to get along with people, so she worries about maintaining a good appearance. However, her demeanor often scares others, leading her to retreat and hide behind games, the only thing she feels she can do well. Tsubasa remarks on her incredible effort, expressing that both her personality and appearance are unique, and he's happy to have met her. This leaves Sayuri completely embarrassed, and Tsubasa asks her to teach them more about games so they can play together. Sayuri agrees and then explains that he'll be able to play when he tries. So Sayuri watches Tsubasa play and he manages to win a fight, feeling happy about leveling up. However, she explains that it was just the game's weakest CPU, and it wasn't as significant an achievement as he thought. At that moment, Tsubasa realizes that their lunch break is over and they have to return to class. They go back to skiing, but while Sayuri just wants to relax and wait for time to pass, Tsubasa wants to try skiing for real because to him, just like in the game, trying is enough to succeed. Thus, they head to the cable car to go up the mountain and ski down. Since Class A was free to ski for the rest of the class, Minami, who was considering where to ski, sees the two together on the cable car. They are a bit worried that something might go wrong, and Sayuri asks Tsubasa why he decided to ski since the teacher asked them to take it easy. He explains that he has challenged himself to try various new things since moving to Hokkaido and reassures her that they are heading to the easiest ski slope, and he asks the teacher for tips before lunch. Sayuri finds him incredible for trying new things, and Tsubasa reveals that Minami inspired him to do so. She was the first friend he made since moving and introduced him to many new places and various foods. The way he enthusiastically talks about Minami makes Sayuri comment that it's obvious he likes her. Tsubasa gets nervous and insists they're just friends, but Sayuri responds that his effort to deny it only confirms her suspicion. Sayuri mentions that it must mean Minami is a good person, but as everyone idolizes her, she always wonders why a popular girl like her would want to talk to someone so unpopular. Because of this, she usually ignores Minami as she doesn't know the right way to respond. Tsubasa tries to explain that Minami just wants to be friends, but before he can say anything, they reach the beginner slope. Then they leave the cable car, and before descending the mountain, Tsubasa says that if he can ski to the end without falling once, she has to give an answer to Minami. Sayuri explains she's not trying to ignore Minami, but he insists, explaining that Minami just wants to be her friend. Sayuri finds Tsubasa's effort amusing, but he says he's not doing it just for Minami, he also wants to be her friend. So she agrees to his request with a condition. Next, they ski down the mountain together, and Tsubasa recalls everything the teacher taught him about skiing. They are happy to find they can ski without any problems, and Tsubasa prepares to slow down to stop safely. He's thrilled to have successfully skied, but realizes he forgot to teach Sayuri how to stop. Tsubasa tries to shout for her to bring the ski tips together, but since Sayuri doesn't hear, he prepares to catch her. Fortunately, Minami appears and explains to Sayuri how to fall without getting hurt. She demonstrates, and both of them fall safely into the snow. Tsubasa is relieved to see them okay, but then the teacher scolds them for skiing without permission. Since it was Tsubasa's idea to descend the mountain, he takes the responsibility alone, acknowledging his mistake and risking both of their safety. Once he goes to talk to the teacher, Sayuri thanks Minami for the help and apologizes for treating her so coldly earlier, making Minami very happy. And so when the class ends, they return by bus, with Minami thinking it was a wonderful day because she skied and finally became friends with Sayuri. However, she's a bit disappointed because she thought the three of them would return chatting, but instead, they ended up sleeping during the journey. On the next day, Tsubasa gets ready to leave home and walks with difficulty, his whole body aching from skiing too much in the previous day's class. He wonders if he'll be able to make it to school due to the snowstorm happening at the moment. His grandmother appears and says that Hokkaido will test her grandson's determination, and he must endure the snowstorm to become a true resident there. Motivated by his grandmother's words, Tsubasa decides to face the weather. However, the cold is worse than usual, and the temperature doesn't help with the muscle pain. He can't see anything in front of him because of the fog. Despite the weather, Tsubasa thinks Minami must be going to school as usual. He keeps thinking about the girl until a car suddenly appears behind him. Tsubasa startles and falls into the snow, thinking it might be the end. He sees Minami and believes his life is flashing before his eyes, but then realizes she is actually there, questioning why he chose to walk during such a snowstorm. Minami asks Tsubasa to get into the car to go to school with her. As he enters the vehicle, he meets Minami's mother, Mei, and notices how similar the two are. Mei seems more like an older sister than Minami's mother. At that moment, Minami comments that the car must be small for someone rich like Tsubasa, embarrassing him. With her remark, Mei realizes he's the classmate her daughter talks about and becomes excited to finally meet him. She asks if he has a girlfriend, surprising Tsubasa. He moves in discomfort, feeling the muscle pain again, which worries Minami. Tsubasa explains the pain is from pushing himself more than usual during the skiing class. Mei comments to her daughter that she has more endurance than others. Then he answers Mei's question, stating he doesn't have a girlfriend. Mei remarks it's a waste and asks what he thinks about dating her daughter, making Minami extremely embarrassed. Minami's mother explains that Tsubasa resembles Minami's father, and they would make a beautiful couple. Tsubasa is unsure how to respond, but Minami resolves the situation by giving her mother a stern look, conveying the message. Mei understands and mentions she got carried away meeting the boy. Tsubasa notices Minami's way of getting upset, and Mei asks if he has ever experienced a snowstorm like that in Tokyo. He expresses surprise that the school didn't cancel classes, and Minami explains the weather needs to be much worse for the school to close. Tsubasa comments that although it's normal in Hokkaido, if it snowed like that in Tokyo, people would act as if it were the end of the world since they're not accustomed to the cold like the people in Hokkaido. He adds that he thought everyone would still be out despite the snowstorm, as they are used to such situations. Mei explains that students go to school by bus, train, or have their parents drive them, especially during winter. Minami also mentions she dresses lightly to maintain a good appearance but rarely leaves home when it's cold. This makes Tsubasa wonder about the reason his grandmother said he needed to face the snowstorm to become a true Hokkaido resident, as none of them do that. Mei comments to her daughter that buying winter clothes like boots and coats is very expensive and the wallet is the first to feel it, especially because the weather takes a long time to change. Minami takes the opportunity to say that her allowance is not enough for her to buy the clothes she likes, and that's why she wishes to have a job. However, her mother responds that both she and her father have already agreed that the girl is too young to start working. Tsubasa observes that they seem to be a very close-knit family and thinks aloud that the two of them are beautiful just the way they are, leaving them blushing with embarrassment. Sometime later, they finally arrive at school and Tsubasa thanks them for the ride. Then Mei asks if his house is close to theirs, and after he explains that it's a 10-minute walk away, she offers to give him a ride every time there's a snowstorm, explaining that he just needs to ask Minami for both of them to go together. They say their goodbyes, and Tsubasa and Minami hurry to go inside to warm up, while Mei watches them together, thinking they would make a beautiful couple. Inside the school, she offers to help Tsubasa walk since he was feeling a lot of body pain. At that moment, they notice Sayuri approaching and greet the girl. And they find out that, like Tsubasa, she also got sore muscles from exerting too much in the skiing class. This makes both of them excited to be in the same situation, ends up making Minami want to have sore muscles too, feeling like she's missing out. Later in the classroom, Minami applies makeup when she notices that Tsubasa finally got the school's winter uniform. He mentions feeling bad for having to borrow the coat from her all the time. She explains that Tsubasa didn't need to worry about it and shows that since it's colder than usual, she brought warmers to wear under the clothes and lends him some to stay warm. Tsubasa thanks her and reflects that he never imagined getting along so well with a girl like Minami, as it's something unimaginable in Tokyo. At that moment, she realizes she needed to buy a new lipstick, and he offers to go with her to the mall after class. The guy ends up using slang to talk, which gets the girl all excited because he's speaking like someone from Hokkaido, something she picked up from him. But at this moment, Sayuri, who overheard the conversation, asks Tsubasa not to use Minami as a reference because she is exceptional in many aspects. The girl questions, after all, she was born and raised in Hokkaido, but Sayuri explains that despite being a resident there too, she doesn't usually use slang, doesn't have much of an accent, and is not very good at winter sports, just like many other Hokkaido residents, proving that not everyone is the same. Minami mentions that her whole family uses slang, while Sayuri says that of all her relatives, only her grandparents use it, and Tsubasa realizes that it varies depending on the location, family, and the person's age. Then he notices that Sayuri brought the game for them to play, which immediately gets the girl excited. Minami is lost about what they were talking about but asks to join in as well. And so after class, the three of them head to the mall, where Tsubasa is amazed by the size of the place. Sayuri mentions that the stores must be more sophisticated in Tokyo. Tsubasa agrees but notes that in Hokkaido, it's more spacious and not as bustling, making it easier to relax. The girls reflect that he must be right. Later, they teach Minami how to play, and she manages to pass a level, making her super happy, celebrating with her new friend. Next, Tsubasa decides to go to the bathroom, and after they tell him the direction to go, Minami asks if Sayuri would like to check out the cosmetics at the mall exit, since she knew the girl also liked those things. Sayuri agrees to the idea, mentioning that she uses colored contact lenses, which can be expensive, and the two could share one and split the cost. She then comments that Minami is a nice person and again apologizes for being so grumpy with her before. Minami feels embarrassed and says she was never bothered by it. So, after Tsubasa returns from the bathroom, the three head to a cosmetic store where they have fun shopping and the girls choose some things that Tsubasa liked. This makes him anxious as he's unsure if the items will be good, but the two reassure him, saying at the same time that he shouldn't worry about it. At that moment, Tsubasa notes that it's time for them to leave, and Minami suggests they take a photo to conclude the outing. After the mall, Tsubasa starts working on his homework and is unsure when it's due. He sends a message to Minami, assuming she would know the answer. While waiting for a response, he looks at the photo they took at the mall, and within seconds, Minami replies that she was in the bath. Tsubasa starts to write that she could reply when she's done when Minami surprises him with a photo of a toy fox that was with her in the tub. The girl wonders how Tsubasa will react, but although he was nervous about the situation, he simply responds that he found the fox cute and apologizes for messaging her during her bath. Minami is slightly disappointed with his reaction and decides to tease him even more by sending a photo of herself in the bath. Tsubasa gets all flustered and realizes he completely lost focus on his homework. The girl eagerly waits to see how he'll react, but Tsubasa just comments that he admires how seriously she takes her beauty routine. He feels anxious, unsure if that was the best response, when he is surprised by a call from her. Tsubasa answers, thinking it might have been better to ignore the call, but he is startled to realize it's a video call. while she's still in the bath. Minami finds amusement in his reaction, achieving what she wanted all along. Tsubasa decides to calm down, and they start talking normally. She asks if he usually uses his bathtub every day, and he confirms. Then she explains that besides her and her mother, everyone in her house uses the tub every other day despite showering daily to save on electricity. Tsubasa questions if her and her mother using it daily doesn't negate the purpose, and she explains that half baths don't harm anyone. This reminds Minami of how her family often travels to places with hot springs. She explains to Tsubasa that there are several in Kitami, suggesting he should consider going someday, and playfully hinting at the idea of them going together. Later, she inquires about what Tsubasa was up to, and he remembers to check if the homework is due the next day. However, when asking, Minami, who forgot about the assignment, becomes distressed upon realizing she forgot to complete the task. In her desperation, Minami drops her phone and lets out a scream at that moment. The noise startles Tsubasa, causing him to drop his phone as well, preventing him from seeing anything further in the video call. After both retrieve their devices, Minami feels embarrassed, thinking she revealed more than she should have, and turns off her camera. Tsubasa is left confused about what happened, as he didn't see anything due to his phone also falling, and assumes it's related to the homework. She decides to end the call, feeling embarrassed about the incident. Later, Minami leaves the bathroom, regretting her decision to call them during her bath. Mei appears and asks if her daughter is okay, thinking she felt dizzy because of the bath. The next day, Minami receives a scolding from her English teacher for not completing the homework. Sometime later, Minami heads to a karaoke joint with a group of school friends where the girl has a blast singing a song. Sayuri and Tsubasa accompany her and are impressed by Minami's talent. Two other friends of hers notice that Minami always sings the same song whenever she goes to karaoke, and the girl explains that she loves the song and it always cheers her up. Tsubasa pays attention to the girl's conversation when Sayuri catches his attention to ask if he's accustomed to going to karaoke. The guy explains that it's not a place he usually frequents, but he has been a few times with his family. Then Tsubasa turns the question back to Sayuri, and she awkwardly explains that she has the habit of going to karaoke alone. Tsubasa gets nervous and says it's great to have her own style, trying not to make the girl feel lonely, but she senses his intention, which ends up making her feel even lonelier. Not used to going in a group when it's time for them to sing, the two feel awkward and their classmates try to help them choose a song. Minami notices that the two are uncomfortable and decides to pick a song for the three of them to sing together, which makes them much more at ease. Later, after enjoying the karaoke, the group grabs a snack while chatting. One of them, named Matsun, mentions to the other guys that the final exams were approaching, so he suggests they form a study group to prepare for the exams. Meanwhile, Sayuri makes friends with another girl who compliments her nails. At that moment, Minami's phone reminds her that Valentine's Day is approaching. She mentions the date to the group, and instantly everyone gets excited and starts talking about who will receive gifts and chocolates. This makes Tsubasa wonder if Minami will give someone a gift when Matsun asks her to give him chocolate on Valentine's Day, and she responds in the most natural way in the world that she'll definitely do it. Tsubasa feels a little sad, but then Minami says she's going to make a ton of chocolates that year, recalling that last year she made 60 sweets to give to all her friends, and a girl comments that it seemed like a school lunch distribution. With that, Tsubasa realizes that she won't be giving anyone a romantic gift, but rather distributing sweets to her classmates. However, he wonders why he felt so relieved by this information. Sayuri observes Tsubasa when a girl asks if she plans to make chocolate for someone. Sayuri replies that she prefers to save money to spend on her hobbies, and everyone comments that it's very characteristic of her. Then one of the guys asks Tsubasa if he used to receive gifts from girls when he lived in Tokyo. He replies that he was only gifted by his family, and the other guys say they're in the same boat. After enjoying the gathering, everyone says goodbye and heads home. Tsubasa is happy to have gone to karaoke and thinks about how much fun he had that day when Minami and Sayuri call him at the same time. Minami asks if they both had fun, and they agree, which makes the girl happy for inviting them and says she'll invite them next time the group meets. Then Tsubasa asks what Sayuri was going to say, but she says it's nothing important and doesn't tell him. And so the three walk together to leave while Minami comments that Tsubasa sings well. Sayuri leaves them talking and ends up falling behind to check her phone, which shows 100 questions to ask someone to find out what kind of chocolate they like. Then Minami calls her and the three continue on their way together. The next day, Sayuri plays a video game, making an effort to forget the idea of making chocolate. However, the girl can't ignore her desire, so she goes to a store that sells various options for gifting chocolate on Valentine's Day. There she ends up finding Minami, who went there to buy the ingredients needed to prepare the sweets she will distribute to her classmates. Minami asks if Sayuri is buying something, and the girl invents that she went there to buy nail polish. But since her nails were already done, she invents again that she intends to buy cosmetics. Then Minami decides to join Sayuri, and after they finish shopping, she takes the opportunity to ask what kind of chocolate her friend likes. Sayuri explains her taste, and they start talking about the types of chocolate. This reminds Minami that she still has to buy the ingredients to prepare the sweets. So the girl says goodbye to go, but before leaving, Sayuri asks if they could shop together, explaining that she wants to make chocolates to give to her, which gets Minami very excited. After the purchase, the girl tells Sayuri that if she has any difficulty preparing the chocolate, she could call for help. Next, Minami starts to leave when Sayuri asks if she plans to give Tsubasa a special gift on Valentine's Day. Minami is confused by the question. After all, she is just a friend of his, just like Sayuri herself. However, Sayuri says that she only plays with Tsubasa while Minami and he have a closer bond. Later, Sayuri apologizes for asking something like that. Then they say goodbye and leave feeling awkward. At night, Tsubasa reviews all the material that will be on the test, trying to concentrate on studying and ignore the fact that the next day will be Valentine's Day. Meanwhile, at Sayuri's house, she gets ready to make chocolates when she sees Minami's messages thanking them for shopping together. At that moment, Minami realizes that the girl was still awake and sends a message asking if she managed to prepare the sweets. Sayuri explains that she always stays up late because she likes to play and is about to start making the chocolate. Then Minami decides to call her friend for the first time, and Sayuri takes the opportunity to ask for a simple recipe. And so Minami gives step-by-step instructions on how to prepare sweets easily. Sayuri starts by chopping a chocolate bar into small pieces at an absurd speed, a skill she acquired from being used to playing. Then she mixes it with cream, heats everything in a pan until the chocolate melts, and pours it into a tray to cool in the refrigerator. After everything is ready, Sayuri comments that it was indeed super easy to prepare, only lacking to chop the chocolate to the desired size. Then the girl asks how Minami's sweets turned out, and her friend decides to keep it a secret, saying she will have to wait until the next day to find out. But then she comments that she is excited about the result of the 70 sweets she prepared to distribute at school, setting a new record for her. Sayuri is surprised by the number of chocolates as well as the number of friends Minami has to be able to distribute all that, and she explains that she always gets excited thinking about their reactions when they are given presents. Despite all the work, in the end, she feels like she's the one having the most fun. So Minami asks if Sayuri made her chocolate thinking of someone special. The girl explains again that she was making the sweets for her friend, but Minami asks if there wasn't anyone else she wanted to give a gift to on Valentine's Day, leaving Sayuri embarrassed. Minami starts to say that she's been wondering for a while if Sayuri doesn't like Tsubasa. But before she can finish, she accidentally bumps into a milk carton, causing a bunch of kitchen stuff to fall. This leads a bottle of soy sauce to spill on all 70 chocolates, leaving not a single one for her to distribute the next day. Minami is devastated to see that all her work has gone to waste, and Sayuri doesn't know what to say to cheer up her friend, but Minami quickly pretends she's okay and comments that it's her fault for not putting everything away after finishing making the chocolate. Then, after asking if Sayuri still remembers all the instructions she received, she says she needs to go clean up and hangs up the call. Next, the girl wishes Sayuri good luck, who thinks it's very kind of her considering what she just went through. The next day, Tsubasa, who was very tired from studying all night and not sleeping at all, goes to check his school locker, making sure he didn't receive any Valentine's Day presents. But as soon as he gets to the classroom, Minami greets him and gives him a chocolate she bought for him, making him very happy. However, he notices that Minami's eyes are slightly red and wonders why. Then, Sayuri shows up and Minami gives her a chocolate too. Afterward, the girl goes to the rest of the class to continue distributing the sweets, and Matsun, instead of thanking her for the gift, asks why this year the chocolate was bought instead of being homemade as usual, making it clear that he was disappointed. Minami acts calmly and says that this year's production was suspended due to some unforeseen circumstances and keeps smiling despite everything. Tsubasa and Sayuri overhear the conversation, and he wonders why she couldn't prepare the chocolates as she wanted. Later, Matsun leaves to receive other sweets. Sayuri goes after him and makes it clear that if he speaks like that again to Minami, she'll beat him up, leaving the guy terrified. Then everyone is given free time to study for the final exams, and Tsubasa continues to worry about Minami. After classes, the teacher announces that the school clubs will take a break because of the exams and that everyone should go home after finishing the day's cleaning. And so later, when everyone finishes cleaning, the students start to leave, leaving Minami and Tsubasa alone in the music room. He comments that normally when classes end, you can hear the school band rehearsing, but at that moment, the school was so silent that it seemed like there were only the two of them in it. Then Tsubasa takes advantage of the fact that they were alone to thank her again for the chocolate. However, this makes the girl break down. She starts crying and Tsubasa gets worried, not understanding what had happened. At that moment, Sayuri passes by the hallway and observes the two of them hidden. Minami tells Tsubasa what happened to her chocolates, explaining that some of them could have been saved because they were just cracked or had a little milk on them, but she didn't want to give her friends spoiled chocolates. Minami explains that she felt like she had disappointed everyone and regrets not listening to her mom, who told her to put everything away after she finished cooking. Tsubasa is at a loss for words to cheer up the girl, so he walks over to the school piano and begins to play a tune, completely absorbed in the melody. When he finishes playing, Minami is moved because that's the song she sang at karaoke. Tsubasa explains that Minami always lifts his spirits, and she mentioned on karaoke day that this particular song never fails to cheer her up. That's why he decided to try learning the melody by ear, having studied piano, so he could uplift her at least once. This leaves the girl overjoyed. Taking advantage of her friend's improved mood, Sayuri shows up in the room to deliver the chocolates she made for Valentine's Day. Both Minami and Tsubasa think Sayuri made the sweets for him. As the girl starts to leave, intending to leave the two alone, Sayuri reveals that she made the chocolate for Minami, remembering her promise to give friendship gifts. Minami is delighted with the sweet treat she receives, while Tsubasa feels extremely embarrassed for assuming it was for him, wishing he could dig a hole to hide in. However, Sayuri then hands him a chocolate. She explains that when she made the sweets for Minami, there was a little leftover, and Tsubasa expresses gratitude for the gift. Then she comments on his piano skills. Next, Minami tries one of the chocolates and is impressed by the flavor. And so the three decide to enjoy the gifts together, combining Sayuri's and Minami's sweets, celebrating Valentine's Day as friends. Next week, we'll have more of this anime as soon as the new episode is released, so go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to hit the like button below to support this video. See you guys.